Oh, hello. If I've pressed the right buttons on my YouTube channel, most of you are watching this on the 29th of December, so post Christmas, pre New Year, in that week between. Um, and so I'd like to say I hope you had a really good Christmas, and I hope you're looking forward to New Year. And around this time, I really like to do the Tabletop Impulse hobby review. So essentially, I'm going to go through all the miniatures that I've painted this year, talk about them, talk about where I was at the time, why I painted that, why I painted it the way I did, how it relates to the gaming that I was doing at the time, and what I was interested in. And we can kind of chart how I've evolved over the course of the year. It's a little bit self-indulgent, right? But it's just become tradition at this point. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on what you think my best work was this year, or any hints to improve, or anything like that as we go along. Right, let's get into it. So, started off with Saruman. Um, my wife and I have been doing a kind of very slow, very slow grow, sort of Middle Earth campaign. I quite like Middle Earth as a game, as a system. It's fine. Honestly, the real draw for me is both Helen and I are huge fans of Lord of the Rings, and I, in particular, often reflect that without Tolkien, wouldn't have so much Warhammer, D&D, so much of this stuff, and you trace it back, and like Lord of the Rings was the first brick. No, I'm not saying obviously I've not got a sort of time machine. I can't sort of see if he hadn't written it, would someone else not have come up with these things? But I still think that like all of everything owes quite a lot to Lord of the Rings, and I find it a really compelling story. I suppose I would write as a, you know, it has deeply religious undertones, and it does therefore do the thing that I really like in stories where the villains, like Saruman here, are people who are like they're tempted by things and they're bent and twisted slowly towards evil. And I really like that narrative. I find it a really compelling narrative. I enjoy villains who, where you can see where they started off as a fundamentally good and decent person, and you can see the series of poor choices and things that led to them being in the state they're in. It's actually quite funny to me that two of my favourite fantasy villains are Saruman and Count Dooku, both, of course, played by Christopher Lee in their, cinema um, versions. Um, but the miniature, at the time, I was really annoyed with it because I think you can see if you look in the folds of the clothes, there's some texture that shouldn't be there, and that is the result of the white varnish just doing its white varnish thing. Sometimes the white varnish just does it, just screws up and imparts this horrible texture to your miniature. Um, but like actually looking at them now, having with a year almost since I painted them, I actually am really taken with both of these. I think they look really good. I technically, as a thing to paint, it was pretty challenging because trying to get all those whites to look like separate things, to look different, to have texture. Because obviously, Saruman the White in the books, I know he has his "I'm Saruman of many colors" moment, but we never see that in the cinema, in the films, and so obviously the board game is based on the films. So you got this costume where you're trying to get depth and texture into a model who could fundamentally come out looking like a cloud if you painted him wrong. And doing things in there like trying to get Christopher Lee's very kind of thick dark eyebrows, which are just such an iconic part of his physicality and hence how the character appears on the screen as well. So really pleased with how this came out. I think it actually looks really good. Don't play with my Lord of the Rings models very often, but I enjoy having them as a collection of things to look at. I think I did a really quite a good job actually on Saruman. And of course, he comes bundled with Grima Wormtongue. I don't know the name of the chap that plays this character in the film, but has a really unhealthy looking pallor, which I hope a lot of that was makeup, right? But trying to capture his kind of almost undead looking face was really interesting, really difficult. I think I've captured it there. I think it looks pretty cool. Again, The costume here was a bit of a challenge. Something I've noticed when you paint something, I've painted some in the distant past now, I've painted some Doctor Who miniatures. I noted it then as well. When you're painting characters who look good in like live action things, and then they're miniatures, you realise just how much Games Workshop designed their stuff to look good as a tiny miniature. Like this guy, all black cloth and the dark brown cloth, and then the brown boots, looks really striking as a villain on a screen. Really hard to kind of bring that all out as a miniature and not just have him look like a kind of dark smear, you know? So I tried really hard to kind of differentiate the surfaces, differentiate the colours, go quite bold with the highlights to make things look, different to each other. And again, actually really happy with the way this turned out. The Palantir, yeah, dry brush. I think it's edge highlighted, sure, but yeah, it's fine. It looks all right, doesn't it? Right, let's move on from Grima Wormtongue. So then we got some Shatterpoint fellas. Now these guys are interesting. These are Shatterpoint bounty hunters, and one of the things about these is almost everything in Shatterpoint is a particular named character. Like you can go and look and get screen reference and be like, oh, that's that guy, that's this guy, that's that guy. The bounty hunter's not so. The little robot, I've forgotten his name. The little robot on the base with the bat fella is a particular character. He's like Cad Bane's sidekick, right? But the bat fella and the I don't even know the name of the race. The fellow with red skin and horns, right? They're not particular characters, so I was free to paint them however I wanted, and I was really pleased. Therefore, I tried to do denim. Don't see a lot of denim in Star Wars, but I decided to try and do denim. I think that came out really, really well. As an effect on his trousers there, really pleased with that. Trying to kind of actually paint on some textures, which I think that came out well. Trying to choose a relatively neutral colour palette. Otherwise, things that, because if they were in something, these would be background characters, and they're trying to be attired in kind of browns and things. I think they came out really well for what they are. I'm trying to think where I was in my Shatterpoint. So at this point in the year, I was still playing Separatists, and I think I must have just picked up the Cad Bane box and started to branch out into kind of not Separatists, but like the Scoundrel side of things, to play around with stuff. Yeah. I can't remember what list I would have done with these. I've used these in lists since then. Maybe I was just painting them because at this point I still didn't have. I was still painting every Shatterpoint model as I bought it. Those days are long past us, guys. But at this point, I was probably still painting every Shatterpoint model as I bought it, right? Yeah, sure enough, here comes Aura Singh. Again, I like the way that she's come out. There's some things that I know how to paint. Like I look at those brown boots and I think, yeah, that's my brown leather SP that every time a bit of brown leather shows up, I go, yeah, let's paint some brown leather. And it always looks really, really good. But blimey, right? Orange. People say yellow is a hard colour to paint. Orange is a hard colour to paint, right? I'm trying to get flesh tones. I'm good with, I'm not even good with human flesh tones. I'm good with, Caucasian flesh tones, because for a long time that was what most, paint ranges and tutorials were based upon. I'm not even really that good at more diverse human flesh tones. And then you throw me an alien flesh tone, you're like, your hair skin's greeny grey. And I'm like, well, actually, she came out really well. Obviously feeling quite fancy. She's got a little shine point on the lower lip there, which is I love doing that. It's something I started doing with my sisters, because they're all sisters of battle. You don't have to paint them that way, but a lot of the artwork they're depicted as quite heavily made up, which I think is pretty cool. So I got into the habit of putting little shine points on lips and things. It's a nice little touch, isn't it? But yeah, I think she's quite really well. Character design is a bit simplistic, maybe, but so there's you gotta remember she's someone's on the screen for about 30 seconds in Phantom Menace, and it's mostly the back of her head. I will say that her antenna snapped off, and you can see in this high res picture that is a bit of paperclip sticking out the top of her head, because that's what I had. Yeah. Now, this fella's interesting. So this is a Blue Wizard. So around this time, I was getting a bit depressed because I can't paint as well as I'd like to. I'd like to be somebody who's really, really good at painting and who, like, I don't want to win competitions like Gold Demon, right? But I would, it's not really a thing. I'd like to occasionally get best painted at, like, a gaming event with my stuff, right? And I was getting in a bit of a funk about where I was with my painting, what was going on. And Zimbad just sort of said to me, look, like, try and paint a miniature that you don't care about, that you don't need for anything, that isn't part of anything, and just don't look up any reference material, don't, like, find a tutorial, don't think about it, just put paint on. And if you're not sure about something, just, like, put paint on and see where it flows and see what it does. So I did some weird things with this one. I remember that I wanted to just experiment with verdigris. I had a verdigris paint that I'd never used, so it's got some verdigris on his staff because why not? And I wanted to try, like, he's got, like, purple wash in his face to try and make his nose a bit pink and his face a little bit ruddy. And there's a little bit of, like, random, like, pretty rubbish looking object source lighting and glow going on the lenses of the snake, and there's a gem as well on the back of the snake that you can't quite see. You can just sort of see the edge of it. I didn't bother with base, really. That's why he just looks like his base is a bit naff. But it came out really well, and also colours that I don't normally use. Because again, Zimbad said to me, "Don't. If you're going to paint a wizard, that's fine, but don't paint him so that he could possibly look like a necromancer." Because I paint a lot of moody, dark-looking things. So I went for blues. Never paint blue. Hate blue. Really, like, it's not my go-to color for a lot of things. But, like, whatever. Let's do blue and a nice kind of teal, and see where that goes. I had the paint for them. Yeah, quite proud of this fella. You know, he doesn't see the tabletop because he's not really a gaming piece. He's not really an anything piece. He's just a piece that I painted because Zimbad was like, yeah, you should just paint a thing. Is it miles better than the things that came previously before it? I don't know. Do you prefer let me know. Do you prefer this guy to Saruman? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, but I did it. And it looks cool. So that's the thing. Wrecker Crew. Right, so this was one of my first big new kill teams of this year, because at this point I was still really into kill team. The Wrecker Crew are really interesting because I never painted orcs before. So this was my first kind of orc flesh attempt, right? And I did loads of work on these. I did the checks on the tabards and on the weapons, on the grenades, on the rockets, and I did loads of work with chipping. I really think they're really cool, and nobody, like, at the time, like, nobody liked them. Like, everyone was like, oh, the chipping is overdone and looks weird, and the blues just look a bit flat, and this and that, and blah and blah. And I did take them to a couple of events, and nobody was ever like, oh, those look really cool. I think they look really good, but I will cop to it and say that, yeah, you know, the way that I painted the armor was a cheat, absolutely. And if other people can look at that and see the lack of care and the lack of effort, then that just means they're more discerning than I am. I kind of took the view because I had so many of them to paint that, like, you know, people say that if you there's a maxim going around that people say, oh, well, people only look at what is usually like faces, bases, and banners. It's like, okay, so you put effort in certain places that you can kind of skimp effort in other places, and maybe there was a bit of that attempted on this, like the flesh of the orcs and the flesh on the squigs, and the painting all those flipping little checks on those. Especially on the tabards, on the knobs, that was an effort of a long time. Maybe I thought I could kind of pull a fast one and take some shortcuts on the armor, but I think the armor's come out really good. I don't know. Yeah, people who are more discerning than me have looked at it and been like, yeah, well, you should have highlighted the blue, and yeah, and you've kind of did it the wrong way. You sponged the blue over the metal, and we can all tell. And you should have sponged the metal over the blue, but I like them. So yeah. I thought they were really good, and when people didn't like them, I got a bit kind of like, oh, But there you go. Some Undead. So one of the things that we were doing this year was the Tale of 6 Hobbyists, where we were painting up a spearhead plus some extra bits for Age of Sigmar, and then we were going to meet up, or we did meet up in October time and play some Warhammer, some spearhead together. So this was my first little chunk for that kind of competition. I think they look really good. Yeah, I mean, like, with things like these, to an extent, they are painted on spec. Like, these are models where I deliberately wasn't trying to push them really, really, really far, because I know how many skeletons that I'm going to have to paint in an Age of Sigmar like army. So yeah, the cloth's a bit flat, and there's a lot of the Null Oil and Agrax Earthshade are doing a lot of heavy lifting, and as is flipping Dirty Down Rust in a pot is doing a lot of heavy lifting, and the Third Degree in a pot is doing a little bit of heavy lifting as well. But there is some like care and attention taken with these, right? Like trying to the actual skeleton part, right, is really carefully highlighted on all of them in a way that I think was possibly a bit dumb of me. I think there could have been some more kind of clever hackiness going on there as well. But like this is my kind of tabletop standard. My kind of, well, look, I've got to churn out, gosh, I only know how many of these. So what hacks, what products, how many wash steps and dry brush steps and things can we because I'm pretty sure the first step with these is like spray them silver, and then you like wash them black, and then you like, or wash them, like there's a brown wash goes on, and then when that dries a black wash goes on, or the other way around, right? It's like a black wash, then paint the metal, and then do a brown wash over the whole thing, and then there's a dry brush stage in there somewhere as well, and then you go back and paint the cloth, and that has a black wash as well, but it doesn't go, yeah, but that's what I'm saying, a lot of process, and very little art, right? But they look alright, don't they? And then I got the Cursed Court. I hate these. I don't know why I decided to paint them. They're not called Cursed Court. They got a name. They're the vampires from originally from Warhammer Underworlds. I decided to paint them box art style in the red armor, and it looks shit. And I wish I'd painted them in like metal armor. But I did it now, and they look better than they did before they were painted. I just think they look a little bit like I'm pleased with the skin tone, and I'm pleased with the cloth, and I'm pleased with the wings on the bat looking fella, and I'm pleased with the boots. And then I look at the bright red armor, and I'm like, yeah, this is why I don't play Blood Angels. I just don't like the look. Right? It needed to be more metallic or something. They look like they belong in a toy shop. I don't know. But yeah, I made my choice. I painted my miniatures, and I'm not going to repaint them because I've got other miniatures that I need to paint. But I'm not a huge fan of them. Aesthetically, and it looks like there's washing and highlighting going on that red as well. Like, trust me, there is. I know because I put the highlights on with the brush. But in that particular photograph, you look at it, and you're like, it just looks red, doesn't it? So yeah, this is. Pro tip: if I do any further painting competitions, just don't enter red stuff. Yeah. Cad Bane. Now he's looking really dark. That is the truth of that. I paint under a really bright lamp, and I think sometimes, just sometimes, some of my miniatures come out looking a bit darker than I kind of think they are, because my eyes sit there and adjust to the thing of it. But Cad's really interesting to paint because he's all like brown, and there's a little bit of a debate over what colour Cad Bane's trousers should be, because in some depictions, I think in the Mandalorian, he has brown trousers as well, or is it in the cartoon he has brown trousers, and in the Mandalorian he has black trousers? One or the other. But I didn't want him just to turn into a sea of brown, so we went with the kind of black, blue, whatever they're supposed to be trousers. Yeah, I mean, he looks pretty good. He looks pretty good. Honestly, I have even enhanced this photo a little bit to adjust the lighting, and he looks really good under a bright light. I'll say that. But he does struggle a little bit with just being darker than you'd think. But he looks cool. And lots of gaming stores, they have really bright lights, so it's fine. And then I added some armatures. I had these for ages, and it was a bid to get some vehicle squares ticked off on my hobby bingo card. We'll talk about hobby bingo card at the end, but like these were done really quickly. Loads of like processes here as well. So they were done in sub assemblies, right? So the entire the underneath skeleton is literally just spray silver, wash, dry brush. And then I think I did the melter guns with a bit of contrast paint to give it that coloured metallic look on the melter guns. And that was it, right? And then in terms of the sub-assembly, it was all sprayed bone. And then I carefully did a recess wash with, I want to say it's Agrax, but it might have been a brown contrast paint like a snake bite leather or something. I did a recess wash with something. And then I hit the panels with a gloss. I very rarely use gloss varnish. Hit the panels with a gloss varnish. There was a bit on the chainsaw where I had to brush on the bone colour, right? And then after the gloss varnish had completely dried, I then painted the black trim so it's more matte. I just painted that on by hand, highlighted it up, and then brush painted a satin varnish over the black trim parts. So it's really playing with real world physical texture. And yeah, they look really plain, but they are supposed to be, they're part of my little small force of knights. I got these guys, and then I've got that I've previously painted in a previous year, one of the medium-sized knights, and that is my allied contingent of knights for my battle sisters. I think they look really good, and they complement the kind of black traditional battle sister armor that I have, and yeah, they're not festooned with heraldry. And it's a bit of a quick paint job, but I think it works. I think they look good and striking and like what they are. And I did put a little bit of effort in on the eyes as well, which I think, maybe I'm kidding myself again, but it's just that thing of, you put effort on one little bit and people go, oh, that little bit's cool. And then they won't notice how little effort you put into the rest of it. But pair of armatures. Now then, so I'm still on Separatists at this point. And then I have the Mother Talzin box, and I still haven't painted Mother Talzin or the supports. But I did at this point paint Sauvage Oppress because I wanted to try him a bit. Sauvage Oppress, really simple miniature actually in a lot of ways. He's only got about 3 colours on him. Trying to tease apart some of the real dark blue into that tabard was certainly a thing. Right, and as far as his face tattoos go, or are they tattoos or are they his skin? I'm never sure. Let me know in the comments. But on this particular miniature, they're actually moulded on for you to follow, so that was pretty easy and straightforward as well. But he's come out good. And then back to Lord of the Rings. So I got some Uruk-hai Berserkers. Really simple miniatures, these, really old. These are from the 90s. They're actually metal. If you buy them from Games Workshop, they are fine cast. But I got some metal ones off eBay, stripped them down with some powerful solvent, and away we go. And there's a lot of washes going. These guys are covered in blood. That's their thing. So there's a lot of the Games Workshop blood. Blood for the Blood God, that's the one. Is doing a lot of work here, because what they do in the film is they fill the helmet with blood. And then they put the helmet on, and then the blood runs out of the helmet and down their bodies. And that's what I tried to capture here. The only little flourish on these, obviously, you have done the handprint, the freehand handprint, which come off pretty well on some of them and looks a bit ropey on others. I did my best. I'm not a master of freehand. Some of the hands are wildly different sizes as well. But again, for what they are, for how much detail is actually on the sculpt or not on the sculpt, I think they came out really, really well, and I'm pretty proud of them. And then I also did some Uruk-hai Scouts this year, and again, more to these, right? But I'm really quite good at painting brown leather, so painted a whole bunch of brown leather. Freehand handprints, I think look really good on some of them and less good on others. But there you go. Also did a freehand on the banner. Sorry for yawning there. Did a freehand on the banner, which is it's all right. Right, we got the guy's head on top of the banner pole as well with the big slick of blood because why not? Looks cool. Yeah, but by and large, again, considering how light in detail these are plastics now, considering how light in detail they actually are, I think they look pretty good. The banner is metal, but the others are plastic. And then we also had an Uruk-hai Scout Captain. Metal figure, again, painted him really in a batch with the others, but he's on his own slide because that's how I took the pictures. Again, I think he looks, for what he is and the detail he has, and the fact that he's just all brown, I think he's come out really, really well. And the Uruk-hai drummer as well. Again, not much more to say. Think I painted these all as one big batch, but there you are. Yeah. Right, now, I think, let me know in the comments what you think. I think this is the best miniature I've painted all year. So this is a Necromancer for my... I put it in as one of the chunks for Tale of Four Gamers, even though, as I said in the Tale of Four Gamers around the Discord, I don't need another Necromancer. I just like if somebody says, hey, there's this character in a thing and it's a lady necromancer, I'm like, oh, okay, a sexy lady that raises skeletons from the ground, that's a character that I so now the miniature is actually for the Empire range in the old world, technically, not for Age of Sigmar undead, but it's fine. We can have a necromancer that's from a different range. That's all fine. I spent a lot of time like brainstorming the colours on this model and like which bits, because I knew the green cloth needed to be there because that's kind of the you've seen my skeletons that I painted. That's kind of a common thread across my whole army. That green cloth that we have, that's the kind of the army's color. And then we have the purple, and then also the blood red accents. And at one point there was bone accents, and then I painted it all up, and then it didn't quite look right. And then because there's also bones, right? So trying to go back and forth on the composition of the miniature. Obviously, I've got that little shine point on the lower lip again because I just can't help myself. Trying to do a little bit of OSL on the candles. It looks, okay. I know there's people out there that would push it a bit more and have a glow that actually like extended out a bit more and hit her hood. I really like the way that the scythe came out. Yes, the scythe, the bronze, is leaning on a couple of products. There is a little bit of dirty down, verdigris and stuff, and some rust as well, I think, on the scythe. The hourglass took me forever to get that to look vaguely how I wanted it. It's not perfect, but like actually regarded with an eyeball, she's really good. I think this is my best painted mini. I think if I go to the Warhammer World open day, which I usually go to, if I go to that in January, I think this is the miniature that I will take. It's not always in January. Sometimes it's in like March. It depends how they do it. But I think this is the miniature I will take if I was going to a Games Workshop painting competition anyway. But I think it's the best model I've painted all year. It's certainly the one that I tried the hardest on, that I agonised over a little bit. So let me know what you think. But be kind. And then some more skeletons. These are the new Tomb... Oh, I don't know. They're whites, folks. Tomb Guard? I want to say... Tomb Warriors. They were called Graveguard for a while, but now they've got a different name. They're whites. They're skeletons, but with more armor. And I like them. They look very similar to regular skeletons now. Like they put so much armor on the regular skeletons. It's like the main way that you can tell these are the elite ones is because they got kite shields and wings on their helmets. I don't like the banner that I've done, but I'm incapable of freehanding like anything really good. on a banner. Like, I'm not one of these people that goes, oh great, a massive blank banner, wonderful. And it looked weird just being green cloth hung up there. So I went for this kind of necromantic language. Is that what we're calling it? I don't love it, but I've done it now. And so that's what we're doing. Everything else, they're just painted using the same techniques as the skeletons, aren't they, really? No extra love here for these guys, but yeah, they're pretty good. Yes, they're leaning on the dirty downs and the different bits and pieces a little bit because there's just quite a lot of them. And then I did another kill team. So this was my Nurgle kill team. I like painting Nurgle. A big fan of it. I tried not to go overboard with the weathering on this one. I think they look pretty good. Reflecting on them, like some of the... I wonder if this is a thing where I ran out of time a little bit. Right? Because I'm looking at some of the dark green on the shoulder pads. I think looks a little bit flat and unfinished. I really like the way the Nurglings came out, even though I'm pretty sure they're just contrast paint. One thing I agonised over was when I realised that there were little bits of cloth. So I needed to come up with another colour for little bits of cloth. So we got this kind of sickly purple going on. If you look at the, I'm pointing, I don't know why I'm pointing. If you look at the Sorcerer's Hood and the cloth wound around the staff, and there's some cloth kind of behind the chain tabard on the champion. Coming up with that colour took a hot minute, but on that, I think they look really good. I enjoyed coming up with the display base for them and the Nurglings playing in the water effects. I think it's all come out pretty cool. Again, another like the Wrecker Crew. I try really hard with kill teams, and then they're just like, people are just like, yeah, they're fine, don't they? And I'm like, well, I was hoping for a little bit better than fine, but I actually, people like these better than the Wrecker Crew. I actually like the Wrecker Crew better than these, but I just really like the way those Wrecker Crew came out. But then at the time, people were just like, yeah. So, but Playroom is pretty cool. I just look at them and I do see all of the kind of trips. There's a lot of like there's what's the product called? There's like enamel streaking grime or something going on there. There's enamels doing a lot of work. There's thinners doing a lot of work. There's weathering powders doing a lot of work. There's a lot of products going on here to achieve that effect. That's not necessarily skill in quite the same way. So I know that. Whether you know that is between you and you know and no one knows who else. But they're pretty good. And then I started into Rebels in Shatterpoint because I was getting sick of losing with Separatists. And I just seen Andor. I'd definitely seen Andor season 1 by this point, and that really cemented like Rogue One and Andor. Like, it's my favourite bit of. I know yes, I Count Dooku is one of my favourite characters, and he still is. But I also really like Andor, you know. And even though Cassian Andor is also one of my favourite characters, and normally I say that I like villains that have, like, you can see whether they're good men and they're forced to do bad things. And Cassian Andor is kind of the opposite, because he starts off as quite a bad man in his way, like quite kind of broken up by his like original backstory and how he's been treated, and quite selfish, quite self-serving. And seeing him go on the opposite journey, but still like he does bad things. He does bad things for the right reasons. I like that kind of morally interesting and compelling character. Although I will, as we're talking about Rogue One, I will, even though he doesn't fit the mold, any of the things I've said, I do like Director Krennic, because I can get behind the kind of just cackling absurd. Like, I'm sure he probably has a tragic backstory in a comic somewhere that explains how he got that way, but I do kind of the way he chooses the scenery, right, and the way he just is. I think, and especially that I'm reflecting now, the way we got to see him in Andor season 2 as like the big bad and not like the middle manager. That was really talk about the miniature on the screen, Phil. Don't just talk about Rogue One. So K2SO, obviously, he's a black droid, and it's really hard to get life into a miniature like this. To do him justice, because he's such a. If you've watched these things, he's such a character. I think he's a real fan favorite. I think the guy that does the his name's gone from my mind, sadly, and 27 people have just left a comment, but really well voice acted and mocapped as well. Actually, I think by the same guy. But yeah, trying to paint black with a black gun, I'd make it look good. So we land on chipping for this one. You know, kind of the way he appears in the films. The chips kind of. I think I possibly could have gone a bit heavier with the chipping, or I really like how it landed around the neck, where he's got like chipping almost as highlight around his neck join, and I feel like I could have pushed that a little bit more and done some more kind of silver chipping as highlight maybe on some of the shoulder panels. But probably, right, what I got caught up in doing with this guy was looking at screen reference too hard and trying to be like, well, they've chipped it like this, so I'm going to try and chip it in approximately the same place. And there is, and you can just see if you look at his neck as well, there is some subtle kind of brown filth stuff kind of there, showing his wear and age. It's hard to pick it up on the black, but it is there. So a simple miniature, but I'm a big fan of K2SO because he's a cool character. And yeah. And then we got Cassie. One of my favourite characters, but this is such an appalling sculpt. This miniature does not. It's fine, it's perfectly serviceable. It does not actually resemble Diego Luna in nearly any way. And it's a pose that Andor never strikes in the film, but it is found in one of the publicity stills. Right? And it's not a thing that really conveys the character of Cassian Andor at all. I really think the Legion got a much better sculpt for Cassian. He's in his like cold weather gear from the you know where he's going to assassinate Galen Erso. Yeah, that bit. He's in his gear from that planet, and it's a much cooler sculpt. Whereas this obviously is from the final attack on Scarif, which he doesn't carry his. If I remember in the film correctly, he stays in this uniform for like 2 seconds because he lands and then he's immediately infiltrating and steals an Empire officer's clothes. And I don't think he ever carries his sniper rifle on Scarif. But hey, it was in a publicity still, so that's what they went for. AMG. The beard is not sculpted on, so the beard I had to kind of try and freehand, like he's got a thing going on where he's got a goatee and then he's kind of got stubble, and I tried to pull it off. I think I executed it reasonably well. I spent a lot of time with this model worrying about like colour matching, the right colour for the trousers and the undershirt, and getting stills from the film, and then like comparing that to swatches of paint. And my wife helped me out because she's got better eyes than me for like tonal variations in color, and it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. But there you go. And then we got the Pathfinder as well, and again, same thing. These took a long time to paint, a lot of screen reference. And even trying to paint the faces to look right, like to not just use my generic recipe for white person, brown person, to try and actually go like, right, let's try and make them look as close to the actual actor and actress that from the actual like stills and things. Challenging to say the least. But yeah, and they look pretty good. Again, I don't think people notice my effort to try and get them looking as screen accurate as possible. I think people just kind of go, "Oh yeah, they're painted." But what can you do? And then we got the Princess Leia box. So this was when I first starting in Rebels. So I bought the Cassian box and the Princess Leia box because they, at that point, that was quite a good pair. This was before Geonosis had come out, right? So that was quite a good pairing. Stormtrooper armor. Basically, my wife's been painting all the clones, so I asked for her recipe. There's a grey wash, like a Soul Blight grey wash or something. That so it's basically just spray it white, coat it in this wash, layer it back up with other white. Stormtrooper slash clone armor is a pretty hard thing to paint. I think it looks pretty good. I also did a gloss varnish, I think, on the Stormtrooper armor, like a brush on gloss varnish, because especially in A New Hope, right, that armor looks so shiny. And I know in some of the other things where they've had stormtroopers now in Andor, in the Golem Massacre, and in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, right, where they've had stormtroopers, they look a lot more kind of like realistic, not really realistic, but they look a lot more matte, basically, is what I'm saying. But my enduring memory of A New Hope is how shiny everything is. So I thought I'd put a gloss on there as well. And then obviously trying to paint the head and make him look as close to Mark Hamill as possible. Does the miniature look like Mark Hamill? How much time did I spend trying to work out how to paint not just generic blonde hair, but trying to work out how to paint Mark Hamill's exact hair color? Too long is the answer to that question. But yeah, I kind of like the way this came out. It's pretty good. And then we got Han and Chewie, same thing. Chewie dead easy to paint, really. It's just trying to make sure you get a tonal variation and look a lot of screen reference to try and work. Like on his face, there's quite a unique pattern of like where is dark and where is light, right? Han actually batch painted Han and Luke at the same time because the armor was not something I was gonna, I should do the armor and then paint the heads, not as a batch, right? So again, they look pretty cool. Not my favorite. Han and also Derek Hero Luke in the Stormtrooper armor. It's fine. I think they look okay. I think Stormtrooper armor is a tough thing to elevate. The clones, they get away with it because you can freehand on all the clone trooper nonsense. The Stormtrooper armor is less. There's less there to work with, right? And then another unit of skeletons, and you can see I've done some of that freehand on the banner again. That I think is looking better on this one because the banner was a little bit smaller. But I'm not wonderfully happy with it. I wish I was someone that could just like freehand an entire skull or something. But yeah, other than that, not much more to say. I just did more of those for the Tale of 6 Hobbyist challenge that we had going on. And then Jyn Erso arrived on the scene, and again, another miniature where I spent a lot of time trying to get it to look like Jyn Erso, who does that very Hollywood thing where she looks gorgeous in like absolutely every frame, and I'm like, yeah, haven't you just been like imprisoned in this desert for like what's going on? But again, trying to get the face right and trying to get the makeup right and the skin tone right and everything like that, because again, Hollywood, she is very heavily made up, especially the lipstick and trying to match the tone of that, and then trying to get that and then sit the face on what is a very muted costume, doing the same thing that I talked about when I talked about Grima Wormtongue. When something looks good on screen, sometimes it's kind of lame on a miniature to try because there's not actually that much tonal variation. And so trying to get that in and get the greens and the browns to look good and work well together despite being totally really similar. Really like the way Jyn came out. Really, I want to play more games with. I really like Rogue One. I want to play more games with Jyn, but I just don't. Personally, Jin's like mechanically her playstyle on the table doesn't seem to gel well with me. But I like the way I painted her, And then Bodhi Rook. Bodhi Rook is a little paler than I would like, given the ethnicity of the actor, but I do struggle sometimes judging skin tones correctly and translating them into paint recipes. But apart from that little wobble, I think he came out really well. I'm really pleased with the texture. I got into his kind of jumpsuit, flight suit, boiler suit thing. That looks really, really good. Brown leather, I know I can just paint. So, yeah. And I think his face looks really, really cool. Does it quite look like the actor? Don't know. And then he's got these Perspex, like high school science lab goggles going on in the film, right? And on the mini, he's got the goggles like on his hairline. And so trying to flipping paint like clear plastic goggles, so I've got to have kind of the idea of his hairline and the idea of the bottom of his forehead. That was a bit of a big deal, right? That was a bit of a big deal. It looks really good. And then we got Baze and Chirrut. Again, these guys came out a little bit darker than perhaps I wanted them to come out. In terms of the like, I don't paint like Chinese skin tone frequently, so I don't have a recipe dialed in. Right? If I went and painted like an entire like the old world army, right, and had to really dial in the skin tone. Cathay, that's what I was going for, and had to really dial in the skin tone. I overload the models. I'm sure I'd dial it in a bit better. They look a little, but then they are quite like tanned in the film. So I do have a real kind of blind spot there for skin tones. Apart from that, I think the models came out really quite well. Um, they're weird costumes. You got the red on the inside of Chirrut's like cloak thing. You've got the stripes that go down one side. So there's a lot there to kind of do. But then other than that, he's just kind of got black cloth going on. And there's really not a lot of tonal variation at all in his costume. And then Baze, Malbus, he's just got a brown boiler suit. Trying to do some weathering and staining on his boiler suit to kind of give it something, because he has like weird stains and marks in the show. And then he's got this. I went for the you paint it metal and then you put a red contrast over it for his red shiny parts. I think it looks close to what he had in the film. Lando, I'm a bit more practiced with black skin tones than I am with Asian skin tones. Like, I'm pretty pleased actually with the way Lando came out in so many ways. Lando's really, really simple, but then of course you've got the lining of the lining of his cape. Now, the way I chose to tackle that in the end was I painted the whole thing silver, and then I painted on some kind of loose designs with green and purple like contrast paints, freehanding it, and then the whole thing was covered over in a yellow contrast paint to mute it down and make it seem like it's all part of the same thing. I think it conveys, it doesn't look exactly like Lando's cloak lining looks in Empire Strikes Back, but I think it conveys a decent effect. The rest of him was pretty straightforward. Blacks I can do. So his trousers and his shoes and stuff, and then his shirt, not a range of colours I often do, but I think I colour matched them pretty well. And then, like I say, skin tone. I have a decent recipe down now for like African skin tone that I think works pretty well. So pretty pleased actually with how Lando was a bit better in the rules of Shatterpoint, because Lando's a cool guy. Callus. Callus is really cool. So trying to work out how blonde or how ginger Callus is when he's a cartoon character is kind of fun. Some of the Rebels characters, it's quite hard to kind of work out how you want to paint them, almost. And his head's obviously a funny shape because he's based on a cartoon character. But his uniform, I think, came out pretty well. The textures of black thing is a thing that I've kind of can do, so I think he looks pretty good. A lot of umming and ahhing about how to paint his rank slide, because why does he have a white square? That's a whole thing that you can go and debate about online if you're one of the people that wants to go and debate Galactic Empire rank slides. Then there's whole galaxies of fun waiting for you there. Yeah. And then I did a 3D printed Callus. Now, okay, so I really wanted, because I don't play Empire, I play Rebel Alliance. And I really wanted, like, I painted the Empire Callus because a lot of official tournaments have a no proxies rule. But I wanted a Rebel Callus, right? And he doesn't appear in his Rebel costume for very long. It's very briefly at the end of Rebels, but I wanted a Rebel Callus that would look good with my other Rebel Alliance stuff. And so I bought a resin one, and the scale was just really wrong. It was clearly had been sculpted for Legion and then just made really big, so his feet were huge, and things like this. And so what I did was I bought the STL of the file, and I literally instead of scaling it up, I stretched it out a little bit. So I just made it a bit taller, but then I distorted it a little bit. And it looks, scale-wise, it looks really, really good. The only downside is I only have a Bamboo Lab A1, so I have a filament printer. So not a resin printer. So you can, especially on this high-res photograph, you can see, especially around his face and his blaster pistol, yeah, you can see some layering lines. If I lived alone, or I had a giant house, I'd buy a resin printer. But such a thing is not compatible with my life at this moment in time, unfortunately. So this is instead what we go for. But I really like it. I think it came out really, really well. If I'm playing Callus at home, not at a tournament, I do tend to use my proxy for Callus. I think it looks really, really good. Yeah. And I think I did a really good job on it, considering how little, like, a lot of the detail on his face is paint. Because I know how little is actually on that face in terms of sculpted detail, because of how I printed it, basically. Bosk. I mean, one of the nicest sculpts they ever did for Shatterpoint, in terms of just the pure joy that you get from looking at Bosk. He's green. Some people think Bosk should be brown. Sometimes Bosk's brown, and sometimes he's green. It depends. I think in Empire he's brown, but then in like a lot of comics he's green. I did green Bosk because green Bosk's cool, but you can do brown Bosk. I'm not here to judge. But yeah, there's not a lot to say here really. Obviously the yellow is kind of hard to paint, but it's a bit overrated. It's a bit overstated, I should say. Orange much harder. His flight suit much easier to get looking good than Aura Singh. So there you go. The scales, there's a lot of contrast paint, doing a lot of work there, as you'd expect on a reptile guy. But yeah, Bosk's cool people, and I sort of painted him up because I wanted maybe I was working towards doing a bounty hunters list at this point. I can't remember what was going through my head at different points, but Bosk's cool people. And then we got Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. And again, another one of these miniatures where a lot of the effort is in textures of black, right? There's something I'm well practiced in doing is trying to bring out the best from textures of black. One thing I really like about this miniature is how much the head of this Luke, this looks like Mark Hamill, right? They don't always hit it, but I think this head looks a lot like Mark Hamill. I think I've painted his face really, really well. So, yeah, that's the main thing to say about that is I really enjoy painting like Luke Skywalker's face and hair. And we've got C-3PO and R2-D2. Now, obviously, the miniatures come in the Endor box, and they're supposed to be on Endor. But for 3PO especially, wanted to capture his vibes from A New Hope, because all of my Rebel stuff is basically based on Scarif in my head, but it could easily be Tatooine as well. So for a lot of my reference material for these guys, I looked at a lot of shots from A New Hope, from when the start, like the first act, when they're roaming around on Tatooine, getting hijacked by Jawas, So he's gone for that really dull. I know that in other parts of the canon, 3PO is really gleaming and golden and bright, right? But I went for that really dull, weather-beaten, like Tatooine wander in the 3PO look. And I really like how it came out. I believe that what I did was paint the whole model silver, and then I put the highlights in and everything, and then there was a wash of. Is it just Seraphim Sapien? No, it must be a contrast paint. But it was a wash of something over the top to get that effect. And then R2-D2, same white effect I've done for Stormtrooper armor. And then just a case of very carefully with reference material, working out exactly which little panels are blue and which little panels are silver. And that took quite a long time to do as well. But I'm really quite pleased with the way they came out as well. Now then, Rebel Commandos. So this is where I deviate from screen accuracy, because obviously the Rebel Commandos are depicted on Endor in forest fatigues, but I wanted to put them in the desert to match in all my other Rebel stuff. Now there's a game, I think it's Battlefront 1. I've not played a lot of the Star Wars games, but my friend Blue at work has. And he was like, oh no, they got a desert variant of that uniform for that model in this game. So I looked up like Star Wars Battlefront 1 Desert Commando Trooper and vaguely copied the design from that, right? Now, happily, I'd done a kind of desert camo before for Kill Team, for my Kazakin, so I had that technique in the bag, and then everything else was just extrapolating from this very old-fashioned video game. But I think they came out pretty good. You know, really pleased with them. And then the same with Endor Leia. I painted her trousers, like the blue trousers with the yellow stripe. That's exactly as she appears in Return of the Jedi. But then the kind of smock or tabard or whatever you want to call it, I just did the desert camo on there instead of doing it in a kind of forest camo. This is not a great head. Like, Shatterpoint's really hit and miss with their heads in terms of how well they look like the actors and actresses. But there you go. I think I brought the best out of it as you can. This does not look like Carrie Fisher. Okay. Have I realised that in this whole presentation, I have done Charming Leia as well. Obviously, I've skipped her out somewhere. That is frustrating for me. One moment, please. Oh, no. There we go. So, I realised that I'd missed Princess Leia Charming to the Last. Also doesn't look much like... I mean, they look different, right? Because her head's really round and her head's really long. Still doesn't look, for my money, that much like Carrie Fisher, but what are you going to do? So this was just a study in white, right? I don't love how Charming Leia came out, honestly. I think one of the whites that I used went a bit weird and streaky on me, and was being resistant to being watered down properly. But she looks pretty good. I seem to have tried to paint Carrie Fisher's eyebrows, which may or may not have been a mistake. But they're quite iconic. So what are you going to do? Yeah. And then we're going to go, we got another Chewbacca. Again, I've already talked about painting Chewbaccas, but this time I was painting the secondary Chewbacca. Don't think I've done as good a job on the secondary Chewbacca as I did on the support Chewbacca, actually. Still pretty good, though, but a little bit... Was I rushing at this point? It's possible, you know. Han looks really good. So I was really pleased to hear that I had done the time to do the jeans on the... bounty hunter, right? So I did the jeans here as well. Now, Han's jeans are weird. It's the whole thing about what colour Han's trousers are supposed to be, because I think in A New Hope they're really blue, and in Jedi they're actually black more than blue, and technically this is from Jedi, but I wanted to have the colour in there and break up the miniature, so I did them blue. I think it's the blue pair that have the yellow stripe and the black pair that have the red stripe. Do you know Star Wars is a real Star Wars is a real thing. And then there's like a whole thing about how they're different, like they're different ranks in the Corellian. It's a whole deal that I dimly remember. But I did the ones that are technically the wrong ones for Jedi and the right ones for New Hope because I think I did that way around anyway. Yeah, so why not? I think I did a really good job on the skin tone here. I don't know how much this miniature looks like Harrison Ford either, to be perfectly honest, but I think I did the best with what the sculpt was. It kind of annoys me how similar in pose he and Andor actually are, but there you go. That's a separate issue. And then we had some more undead. Some Barrow Knights, I want to say. They're Black Knights, right? But some Barrow Knights. Again, painted in exactly the same techniques as all the other things in the army project, with some, again, a hand painted banner that I'm not massive about, but there it is. Yeah, Lando and R2 didn't put the bar on R2, so I was essentially painting the exact same R2 I'd already painted, but on a base of his own. But that suits me because the bar is stupid. And I didn't paint the hat on Lando because, again, the hat is stupid. Lando was pretty fun. Trying to get that armor to look like it does on screen was pretty interesting because it's a very interesting kind of coloured armor, mostly kind of verdigris, like it's beaten copper armor or something. That's pretty cool. Other than that, there's not that much more to say about these. I think they're fine. I think I was painting better at the start of the year, and I've gotten worse towards the end of the year. What's that about? Did I just become tired? And then we did some terrain for the Warhammer World meetup for the painting some for for spearhead. That's the word that was eluding me. So that was one set of spearhead terrain, and that was the other. Again, painted really, really quickly. Loads of washes, loads of dry brush, loads of effects paint. But for terrain, it's good enough, right? I think they worked. They look good. They look better than unpainted terrain. So that's a win in my book. Kane and Jarrus. There's a little bit of a debate about what race Kane and Jarrus is. Again, because it's a cartoon, and people have a way of interpreting skin tone of that kind of anime style character in different ways. It's interesting the way the human brain kind of does that. But there you go. This is my interpretation of what Kane and Jarrus should look like. I think I did a pretty good job. Not on the lightsaber. The lightsaber's a bit ropey, to be honest with you, but on everything else, I think I did a pretty good job. He's a very simple character design. All the Rebels characters, apart from Sabine, are pretty simple in terms of colours. Like it's like green, grey, browny brown, browny green boots, bit of black leather, off we go. But yeah, and then Ezra as well. Ezra's nose looks bent, and I don't know if that's my highlighting it badly, or if that's something to do with the sculpt. But he looks a bit like his face is twisted, which kind of bothers me. And I'm not quite sure what's going on with his eyes. But you can't really tell when it's just this miniature at a normal distance and not a really zoomed in photo. Yeah, I always consider Ezra to be Middle Eastern. And then other people are like, no, Ezra's like white. And I'm like, what? He just has a suntan. And I'm like, well, I painted him the way I think he's supposed to be. But yeah, orange is an absolute waste of time. I loathe it. Truly, I loathe it. There's like 5 coats of orange to get a decent base coat on this miniature. Horrible. Chopper. Again, more orange, which sucks. I wasn't sure if this destroyed droid was supposed to be anyone in particular, so I just gave it a black hat, like it was a vaguely a Galactic Empire working for droid, you know. Yeah, I think Chopper looks alright. A very simple miniature to paint, to be honest. The main thing was trying to look at reference material and get those little yellow patches in the right place, stuff like that. And then Sabine. I tried. I tried to hand paint all the different bits to Sabine's armor and the stripes and the chips and the phoenix on the chest and all the rest of it, and the hair as well with the blue roots faded out to orange. I tried really hard. I tried to get her eyes to look right with, she's got really heavy like eyeliner going on, or it's just the anime style of the drawing where I tried to get her eyes to look really right as well. I tried to get the paint splatters on the gloves and the boots. Did I quite do it? I don't know. Right. I think it's like 95% of the way there. But you know when you spend so much time trying to paint something and you get to a point you're like, that now has to be good enough, right? And with the smoke as well that she's exploding away from, I tried to put some flames in the middle of that smoke and it looked awful. So I ended up repainting it and just being like, nah, it's just going to be some smoke. It's not going to have an explosion in the middle of it. We can't do it. It's not working for us today. But yeah, that's Sabine. IG, one of them, 11 or 88B. It's just a silver robot with black leather and black guns. And then there's the other IG just being a silver robot with black leather and black guns. I needed these on spec, on a deadline for a tournament, right? So I just painted them, and they're painted now, and it's fine. And the same with Mando. I've seen some really beautiful Mandos that people have done, where the Beskar is really brought up to a high polish and made it really shiny, and I did not do that. But I did spend quite a lot of time on Grogu, so maybe that balances it out. Grogu and Grogu's pod look really, really good, and then the actual Mando's like, hi, I'm also here, so, but hey, there's paint on the miniature, so we're winning. And I also painted all my Shatterpoint terrain as well for a challenge on the channel, which is great. And then dragons. So we did the hobby challenge for the tale of six hobbyists, like Spearhead challenge. And then after that, we were supposed to do one more quarter of Spearhead, and then everyone was really excited to move on to the next day, which we decided was going to be the Old World. So I don't really know. If you follow my live streams, I don't really know how I want to do my Old World army, whether it wants to be mainly warriors, mainly barbarians, or what. But I wanted to get something painted to meet the deadline, so I did a dragon. It came out really well, and it was mostly done with dry brushing, with like the Artist Opus dry brushing techniques, where you use a dampening pad and you do things like that to kind of build up the colours. And that's how I did mainly the red of the whole thing, and then just went in back later and painted the bones and the eyes and the teeth and the base and things. But I think it looks really, really good. Also used some dirty down moss on the base there to paint the actual moss. The moss is sculpted on, but I just stuck it on there with dirty down. It looks really good. And then I also painted Galrak because somebody kindly pointed out to me, and I say kindly in air quotes, doing a lot of work, having painted the first dragon for my chunk, and then they were like, actually you can't use that in 1,000 points because it's too many points in rare. And I'm like, cool, okay, I'll paint Galrak as well because he's 500 points, but he's a lord, so you can I won't, but you can spend half your army on a lord if you want to do that. So I did that as well. This model was an absolute pain in every part of me to build, because this whole model, every single joint it's metal, so every single joint is drilled and pinned and super glued, and it just took a long time just to build him. But then painting wise, pretty dreamy again. Used dry brushes again. A bit more difficult because obviously he's not just red, he's red into the blue. That was all done with dry brushes, and then I went back later and painted the black of his few remaining scales, and his wing membranes are black, just following the heavy metal colour scheme. I think he came out pretty well as well. That's everything I painted this year. I didn't finish my bingo card. I was 2 monsters and machines and 2 rank and file, 1 rank and file away from doing it. The monsters and machines, I've got, at one point they were going to be 2 penance engines. I've got penance engines on my desk, and then I never got around to them. And then at one point they were going to be chaos spawn, because like, oh, I can quickly knock out 2 chaos spawn, and that's 2 monsters. And I got chaos spawn on my desk, and then they were never the thing as well. So I just say we didn't finish it. And the rank and file was supposed to be another set of things for Lord of the Rings, but then we never got around to prepping for that either. So I don't know if we're going to do the hobby bingo on the channel next year. I did paint more than is on that card. I just painted things that didn't fit in the categories. White Dwarf have released the hobby bingo card for this year. It's the same card. It's the same squares. I don't know if I can be bothered, but I'm going to talk more about that. I'm going to have another video. I say I'm going to record another video. It's currently midnight, and I'm going away tomorrow morning, but I'm going to record another video talking about like looking ahead to next year, to 2026. But this has been my recap of my hobby journey for this year. Let me know which you think was my best model. I feel like I started off strong, kind of got worse or perhaps lazier as the year went on. We'll have to see what happens there. I think essentially, I forgive myself with laziness when it's things like a squad of skeletons or a squad of Urukai. It's like fine. But I think I started to pull a few corners with things like the IG robots and the Mando. Could have been a bit better maybe, but we're yeah. I'm not a fan of people who want to I remember talking to this on the Discord to I think it was Matthew Poole. And he's like, oh, if I don't like something, I strip it and start again. I'm like, if I don't like something, I look at the 50,000 other things I have that are worse painted because there's no paint on them, and I paint those instead. But people have different ways of looking at these things, don't they? Right, thanks everyone, hope you enjoyed it, and a big thank you to Alex McHenry for sponsoring the channel at the highest possible tier. Cheery, 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 bye, 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 bye.